the servants who once lived here for the family, Akiko and Wilhelmina, acknowledged. In this episode, we discuss the Unitarian Universalist Association and our view of it. This is not an authority. This is not a good source of information for facts. Like, this is just as congregants what we're seeing and what we know and what we've been taught and what we've learned. So go ask ask your pastor or a theologian or something for real facts. We're not an authority. We're just silly people having a discussion about current events within the UUA. We also discuss the upcoming General Assembly and some of our thoughts about it, and also some of the euphemisms used in the programming. So we are discussing homelessness towards the end. Yeah, I hope you enjoy. Remember to be nice in the comments. Remember, we don't represent any group or congregation. We're just us. This episode contains explicit language. I hope you enjoy this episode.
My, albeit limited understanding, is that the UUA is a profession, like a organization, a nonprofit organization created by UUs in concert to support UU professionals, ministers, music leaders, that sort of thing, right? And then it's like a way for people to like get together and like, or at least this is how it was sold to us in the membership class, that it's basically like a way for all these diverse UU congregations to like be in concert a little bit more, like to be working together and have more cohesion, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was actually very specifically mentioned to not be a governing body and to be a voluntary membership organization, and that they have a suggested amount that a church would pay as a member, but I think you can be a member without paying the full amount. But I remember also that our church is, and has been for some time, like a full member. We make the full financial contribution every year. Mm-hmm. We're like active supporters of the UUA. So yeah, I don't remember exactly why I started talking about this. I was talking about it because I was like pissed off about the fact that a ticket to an online conference is $400. Like, it's crazy. Like, what is that paying for? Like,
okay. Yeah. So I understand that actually conferences do cost money. I work at a job. One of the jobs that I have is for a company that is global, and they put on trainings and they do conferences and they do things that are like, here's a speaker, you can go to it. But like, a lot of the times, first of all, I've never been expected to pay for any of that stuff. But like, speaker fees are absorbed by the company because they know it is a benefit to everybody to like be on the same page or like have the same sort of materials available, and it helps me know like who do they support, who do they appreciate, like who do they value. And I'm like, okay, they invited this speaker over, I've read his book, it's fine, it's fine. Like, that person doesn't have radical views that I adamantly disagree with or think is dangerous or whatever. Like, the whole thing sort of keeps everything in balance. But as an employee or a lay member of a church, I would assume kind of in that same level, I would never be expected to pay to attend things that gets us all on the same page. It makes it feel like that's not the point of it. Like maybe it just costs a lot of money to put on a conference in ways that we don't know anything about. Like there's software and ticketing and like you do have to have moderators. Like there's a lot to putting on an online event. Like I don't know, everyone watching the same TV show at the same time is like an online. I don't like these things do cost money.
Right. There's like administration and even just the material costs of like bandwidth and power and like being able to keep a conference room that's open to hundreds of people, I guess, and like it has different rooms, and I don't know. I get it. And they probably are paying some of the speakers, as you said, and like it just seems
I don't know why the cost of the conference is the responsibility of the lay people.
right. Well, and also then does that mean like do our delegates, each congregation is allowed 2 delegates if the congregation, like there's also requirements for like how you're allowed to be a voting congregation, which also I think has to do with financial contribution.
Yes.
Which is interesting because if the deal is that they're making a change that affects everybody, I know it's like voluntary to adopt these things, but it is like they're like taking on the role of like the Vatican, essentially. Like they're like, we are the center from which the religion flows. So like you can adopt these new, if say Article 2 changes, then we can like adopt the new Article 2 or not be as official as you use anymore, really. Because they're like usurping the role of arbiter in a way that like isn't supposed to happen with independent congregations, especially considering that like this change is a top-down initiative across the board. Yeah. So like if it affects everyone but you can only vote if you pay, that's not democracy. That's oligarchy. Which makes perfect sense. That's why I'm like, oh, do y'all just not think $400 is very much money? Is that what it is? Or is it like if the delegates have to, I don't know, just the more.
Did you see some of the workshops? They were like attracting working class people to your congregation. What to do, how to help our neighbors living in non-traditional, non-structured living situations. Houselessness or something. It was something fully absurd.
Whatever is the current, all that stuff. It's just like separate. Those euphemisms don't do anything for the affected people. They separate the people who use the euphemisms from the icky feelings that come with actually looking at someone's situation. Because I'll tell you what, I was fucking homeless when I was homeless. It's as bad as it sounds. Like, don't remember somebody corrected you when you called you said you were homeless and they said houseless?
Yeah.
They corrected you?
Yeah.
Well, guess what, motherfucker? In order to get assistance, I had to go get a homelessness verification letter. I had to go very far out of my way into town several times to finally be able to meet with a social worker who could say, yep, you're homeless. Here's your letter signed so that you can now get services. It's one of the most dystopian, weird video game fetch quest experiences of my entire life. I was like, I am an RPG character and someone did a bad job. And now I'm in a weird part of the game that only happens if you suck.
That was crazy.
It was so crazy.
You had to, okay. It's open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., I believe. And then they said, what? Every time I called, it was just like just rang and rang and rang forever. And then it finally was like, okay, if you're calling for this thing, that person's not here. You have to call this number. And then you call that number, and it rings and rings and rings. And then eventually you get a message that says, here's an email address that you can use to contact me. And then if you email that email address, it bounces back because the email address is incorrect. And then you freak out and you start over again. And one time I eventually talked to a person and they said, okay, the social worker is here, what was it, after 2 p.m. She doesn't come in until after 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to come after 2 p.m. And we do. And they said, she leaves at 10 a.m. You have to get here before 10 a.m. And I was like, I'm going to freak out.
Yeah.
That is, so we had to go there several times. It was like an hour away from where we were staying. We were staying in...
On the floor of a vacant house at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when we were no longer living in campsites. We were staying in an empty, unfurnished house that was on the property of our friend's house, but that belonged to her grandma, but they were in the process of being forced to sell the land. So that was pretty terrible too. That was like the most comfortable we had been in a long time, but we were watching Hawaiian people lose their land, right? Like we were there on the land as it was getting taken away from them.
Yeah, my friend that let me stay there, and she was like, don't tell my grandma, and I was like, that's not cool, actually. We're gonna talk to your grandma right away and ask her permission to be here. Like, I'm actually not comfortable being on someone's property that did not say it was okay.
Yeah.
So we did that right away, just to be on the up and up. And the grandma was like, yeah, of course. Like, you poor, nice, lost white people look okay. And we helped with some of the trees, and we cleaned up some trash, and like our kids all played together, and it was all really nice. And next door, several times a week, there was preaching from a congregation that had just moved in. They were very loud. They were blasting into the window of my friend's kid's bedroom. So she is like a 10-year-old, just hearing this prosperity gospel, kind of just snake oil salesman sort of thing. Like, donate money and then God will bless you 100-fold. Like
Pretending to speak in tongues. It was like a really fake, just like repetition of weird sounds that he would do as he was talking, and it's just not what people speaking in tongues sound like.
It is not. I
Like,
I know what it sounds like. He was being a scammer. And a few times on our phones, I don't know what this is, but like a weird symbol came up on our phones, like whenever they were there, like collecting money, and I'm like, this is freaking me out. Like, I don't like this. I don't know what that is, but like, I don't like being in range of your network. Like, it's really freaking me out. And then our friend's land is getting taken away. I'm still doing calls for people who are in their corporate jobs, and everyone's getting laid off everywhere. There are people building all kinds of stuff that don't seem good for humanity, and to keep that as vague as possible. And they're calling me, the therapist that their job set up for them, telling me, like, what is the meaning of life? Like, what is this all for? Like, everything kind of feels gray and muddy and bad, but also I think I trusted people that I shouldn't have, is the people that were getting laid off, which is like, yes, that's step one. Let's figure that out. It's gonna be okay. and people told me their dreams, and their dreams were, no one dreamed of working for someone else. People dreamed of normal things. You guys, follow your dreams.
Yeah.
All of your dreams are so normal. People go, oh my gosh, but I could never do that. And I'm like, what?
My uncle does that.
Yeah.
You're talking about a normal thing. You
Yeah.
don't have to work a job that is killing your heart and your soul, and like your body also, like you're destroying your body through like not getting enough sleep, flooding it with cortisol. Oftentimes, I mean, maybe, you know, a lot of times you might be eating well. You might be eating healthy food. That's at least something that like the money can get you, but like you might not be, because it's hard to cook if you're like eating it. I don't know. Working jobs like that just kills people, and it like makes you bitter, and like then you like get all this money and you're like too tired to use it, or you're like too burned out, or you're like, what is my life even? You know?
Thanks for watching. Remember, this is just like our personal opinion, and we could be wrong about stuff. This is not a source of information. For real, for real. You should look at primary sources. I appreciate you guys. Keep it kind in the comments.